Thanks for coming this morning. I'd like to go through slides of my work, and I'll go fast because there's a lot of content. And so I'd like to begin kind of from the beginning. So I was really into art and drafting, or architecture and that in high school. I wasn't sure where I fit within my career path. And it's kind of tough to ask somebody who's 17 or 18 to pick their destination and what they're going to do every day for the rest of their life, possibly, and what might be their passion. So, fortunately, I looked at fine art. I had a scholarship to Detroit Mercy College, but then I went to this firm called Sundberg and Farrar out in Southfield, and Monty Farrar, who was one of the owners of the firm, gave me a tour of the company. And after seeing that, I said, this is it. Industrial design was a beautiful blend of art, architecture, and engineering, and it offered me as an individual for looking for my the destination where I wanted to go to school. Having CCS in the Detroit area, the right fit. I looked around at some of the other colleges around the country and found that really college for creative studies had all the elements that I wanted. And so fortunately, I started school in '76. Sounds like a long time ago. Actually, maybe it was fall of '75. Back then, we built models out of wood. They're rapid prototyped, and we used resins and all kinds of different materials. But back then, they were patterned out of wood. And so this was a computer I did when I was a junior. And it was 1977, 78, and you can think that back then Steve Jobs had just done his first computer a couple of years before. And so the idea was that someday a computer could be in all the homes. And then this was a kind of a medical device that a nurse or paramedic would wear to take a patient's blood pressure and heart rate and all that. So that was one of my senior projects. Moving on from there, after my year of graduating, I went to Europe. We have relatives in France, some that I'd never met, so I did mail them a postcard with my picture on it, so they'd know who to pick up at the airport. And so I traveled around, and I remember seeing these folks cutting the grass. And I think about design, and where does design come from? Well, design oftentimes comes from need. Well, in this case, if you look a little closer, they were actually cutting the grass on an incline. So one person was holding the rope, one pushed the mower. And then design also comes from interest. It comes from interest from your needs, your hobbies. So in this case, I met this fellow. He was out in Farmington, and he had his bike all souped up with headlights. It even had a grill on there. But for him, it was kind of his sense of design to put it all together for what he enjoyed. And then I look at design and I think, design, if it can express what it does, it's fantastic. In this case, this was a slide in France in a park, and it expressed the emotion of being able to slide. So just out of school, one of my professors and a colleague I worked with, and he called me in and he said, I have a project I need your help on. And so we both worked on designing the tire. It was a directional tire for Goodyear. And in this case, they had picked the design that I had done, and it had kind of this widow's peak design. And I think back, it was a matter of putting the French curve on there and saying, that's a nice pattern. And you think, well, the tires, are they engineered? Now, airplanes are engineered. Airplanes kind of all look alike, but tires are all different. So therefore, there is aesthetics in tires. So when I began, I worked for Steelcase right out of college. And I loved Europe so much I wanted to go back. So I left Steelcase, went to Europe, lined up a job with Philips in Eindhoven, and then the economy went soft in 1980. So they backed out on that job position, and at that time I had landed Hayward as a client while I was waiting, and they were just a small furniture company. And so these are some of the products that I worked on with Hayward. Fortunately, after that time, people went around to other companies, so they knew of my work and took me with them. So all of a sudden, I had a breadbasket of clients. So I thought, well, I'm going to consult. So that's what I've done ever since, and it's been 32 years. So these were some of the products I worked on. They were in the mid-'80s. I guess the hairdo kind of gives it away. And these are some of the products that went along with this system of furniture. And it even had air in it. And then while I was getting my start, I needed to make a living, so I did a broad base of different products. So I worked on exhibit design. This was for EWI out in Livonia. And of course, these were marker renderings, pre-computer. And then I worked for another company up in Green Bay, Wisconsin, KI. And they had a product that they wanted to put together with, it would be the United Terminal out at Chicago O'Hare. And Murphy Yan was the architect on that, and so we worked together. And so this is the airport seating out at O'Hare, if you go through the United Terminal.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Yes.
I have a million-mile flyer.
Oh, so you know those chairs?
Are they specifically designed so you can't lie down and go to sleep?
They are. So let me tell you a little bit about airport seating. Airport seating isn't necessarily the most comfortable seating. They want you up at the restaurants. And there are usually arms on every chair, and there's a reason for that. Sorry, that was not my idea. So the other things I worked on were, I worked with Pentax and Pentax cameras. And so in this case, it was working on a gun scope, and this was when they were bringing silver halide cameras over to digital. We had this kind of idea for a changeable back. And then this is one of the cameras that I had done and went into production. And then they used me on one of their national ads, and they asked me if I'd be involved. It was kind of funny, they ran this ad on the back of Popular Photography, which was really fun, but the stylist whited out my beard because it was about 5 o'clock at night by the time they finally took the shot. And so these were pre-Photoshop days. So they couldn't have the beard back. So I looked rather young. So it's kind of interesting to do a diverse mix of products. So in the early 90s, I worked with a company named Harder. They were located in the southern part of Michigan and now the northern part of Indiana. And so I did a number of chairs for them. I have like 5 different chair lines with Harder. It's been a nice relationship. It's a great company. And the quality of their craftsmanship is really nice. So anyways, this was one of the early chairs, Calliope. And it's still in production today. It's been just over 20 years that they've been making it. This is another one last year. These are more simple chairs, office chairs. I'd often prototype the arms and base and the backs. I think this might have been in 93 or 94 around there. I approached Bernhardt with this chair design on drawings, and I remember 2-3 weeks went by, and their design vice president called me back. And he said, well, nobody likes the design. And he said, but if you'd like to build a model, you can. So I thought, well, it's worth the risk. So I went and built this nice little scale model, and I wrapped it up in a nice little bag, and then I put live animal stickers on the box so he was sure to notice. And I sent it off. And so I waited, and luckily that day he had called me back. He says, we just received the chair, and I'm faxing you the contract. Everybody loves her. Fortunately, it came out at NeoCon, which is our big furniture show in June at the Merchandise Mart for our contract industry. And it won a Best in NeoCon award, the first one Bernhard had won. One of the next projects I worked on was a case good collection. Case goods are like desks, credenzas. And so oftentimes they'll put out a bid to a number of designers and you'll come in with kind of a proposal. And these were some of my drawings in that proposal. And again, pre-computer days. So then this was Visions that came out in 1998. And it's a case good collection that's a lot of accounting firms such as Deloitte and Touche have specified it. I think they did a 500 office installation in LA at one time. Merrill Lynch is standardized on it. So for a while there, I think it really had a run as one of the best-selling case goods. So oftentimes what I would do is I'd master prototype like the hardware or the lathe. This chair here is called the portrait chair. It came out in maybe 2001, but it's done very well. It's interesting to talk to the reps to hear where they place, and the rep from London and said that Sotheby's had bought this particular chair for one of their lobbies. If you go into any of the Fidelities around the country, this is in their lobby. What's really interesting is sometimes, like the purple chair I showed earlier, one time I was watching television, they were interviewing a woman in Marie Claire magazine, and she was sitting in one of the chairs. So it's always fun to say, hey, you know, it's my chair. Because you never know where they're going to go. I know that, like the purple chair, MTV, MGM Grand, Disney specified it. This particular chair I have up here, and it's a wood side chair, and it's a piece that can kind of blend with a lot of different pieces. And it's really nice to be able to take a chair and have it serve a utility, but have the beauty of sculpture. This particular chair was really made to look nice from the back. It's really attractive when you go into an office. Oftentimes it's not the front of the chair, it's the back of the chair that you see. So it's important that the architecture of the chair look good from all angles, also from the back. So oftentimes I always say, can I have a photo sample? So I always, try to get some of the pieces, and so luckily that was the photo sample from the purple chair there in the portrait, and so I have them in our living room. Oftentimes when I work, I go through and I prototype it. And in this case, I moved from the drawings, which I had approved from the company, and then I move into a scale model. This is a little half-scale model, about 16 inches high. And so once that looks correct, then we move into the full-scale model. In this case, they actually scanned that model and milled out a giant chair out of resin. And then from that, we used the CAD data and went into a full-size chair. And that's what's harder. It's called the meat chair. Not the meat you eat, but the meat when you greet. This is the line. So then this is another project that I worked on. And so what they basically do is say, well, give us a proposal in 5 weeks and come back to us with what you think would be a good fit for this chair. And so, now the proposals oftentimes they might pay a little bit up front, or in this case they don't pay anything, they're just kind of saying, give us what you might propose to do. And so in this instance, I had 5 weeks. I figured most people are going to do CAD renderings. I like to do models. So in that time, I came up with a design and made the little scale model on the left. And then as you can see the chair up here, a couple of years later, then it's in production, but it looked pretty close. And again, a lot of the parts were scanned right off my original model. So I'd like to go through and take each part of the chair and see how I can refine it, make each component a little bit more beautiful, and that the form is very cohesive with the overall product. In this case, you can see the arms on the upper portion there. And then this was kind of the breadth of the line. it offered where it had all these different colored backs, so it could be used in like a nurse's station or a hospital. And then they could be upholstered. It was great because the colors that didn't sell well could be upholstered. They would be the inner shell. And then at Neocon, our furniture show, in June, this was the rollout. So we had all these different colors and compositions. And it's really nice when we, as industrial designers, can offer a piece that can be tailored for interior designers to make it their own. So depending on what colors they pick and what textiles they put on the seat or the back, they can compose their own chair. This project here was for Vecta, and it's now sold through Coalesce, which is a steelcase company. The fellow who's president of the company is a friend of mine, and for years we talked about working together. And finally I'd come up with an idea of doing a product for them, combining the materials of hard and soft plastic and co-molding them together. And you can see this chair here does that. And so originally I had kind of these ideas of, molding these materials. I wasn't sure we could quite do it and how we would fasten it. But so it was probably on this one, I worked close to a year before I really had a commitment that they were going to manufacture the chair. So I was flying down to Dallas, making models, sending sketches. And so I started with kind of the sketch that I just had up there, and then I refined it a little more, and then I go into more of a drafting. And then from that, I project it up full scale, and I go right into my shop, and then I start to bend tube and weld it and fiberglass and then again make a full scale model in this case. And then they'll take that model and scan components and then digitize it, and then they can actually mill right off of that data. So then this is, with a couple of years later after that, the chair came out. And it won a gold award at Neocon. So anyway, this was a fun chair to work on because I like to combine materials of putting two materials together, and this I was able to do that. And it even has a cup holder. Yeah. And then this was the rollout at Neocon at the furniture show. And then some of the other pieces I've done in the past, I've not just done furniture. This was for Bang & Olufsen and Visteon. It was a project where they were going to do a stereo together, so they had me do a proposal quickly of what it might be if they were to do the stereo. It was going to go into the Lincoln LS and I think the Jaguars. Other products, this was a lock. I work with a company, Ceres, where I've designed bike racks and other bike accessories. I'm working on a number of bike storage devices for them right now. We have Fanuc Robotics in the Detroit area, and this is a little teach pendant, so we would hold and teach the robot how to move. And so this was the case where I designed this little computer, and we had it all worked out, and then they were going to have somebody digitally render it. And so I said, how long is it going to take, and what's it going to cost? And he kind of told me, and I said, look, in 4 days I can build you a model of that. So this model came about in 4 days. And then they liked it a lot, but then we went into a more of a refined design where it worked well with a left-handed or right-handed person. You could actually pivot this handle. So it's basically a PC that they teach a robot how to move. So I collect mid-century modern furniture for fun. And I like 40s and 50s pieces, and then we have it kind of throughout our home mixed in. And so it's nice to kind of revisit, the pieces of the past and mix them with the pieces of today. So, recently we had a lot of films filmed in Michigan. And while they were filming in downtown Northville, I went down one night and they were shooting the movie Scream. And so I met Wes Craven while they were filming. And I asked him if I could watch, and he's like, no problem. And he asked what I did for a living, and I told him I designed furniture. And so he went on to tell me how he had a mid-century home in LA, and he was renting one in Ann Arbor too, and he collected furniture. So we're both excited to learn we were into the same pieces. And so he explained a little more in depth the movie process and how they filmed and did the storyboarding. And so I felt he needed to have a screen chair. So I have these blanks in my shop, and so I cut that out. And then a few days later, I called his rep, and she came out. She said, you just can't go and give Wes Craven a chair. I have to come and look at it first. So she came by and looked at it, and she said, he will love this chair. And fortunately, he did. He had me mail it to his cottage on Martha's Vineyard. And then when he came back to take a couple more shots, I hurried up and made a couple more to have him sign them for my kids. So, hey, thanks for coming. And I think we're going to open it up to some questions, if there's any. And I really appreciate everybody being here today. Yes?
Do you have a favorite piece of the thing?
It's hard to say. They're all kind of like your kids, to some point. And this one was probably the most difficult and innovative because there's not another chair out there where they had molded two materials. I think it's really difficult. You see a very simple piece. Those simple pieces are the hardest ones to do. A piece that hasn't been done before. It's kind of like poetry. You're trying to tell a story that hasn't been done. And with furniture, it's not easy to come up with that really pure, clean piece that has an identity of its own. So I would say this piece here has a timeless quality that's unique. But it's, for each piece of work. Yes?
What's your favorite place to find your furniture or the things that you like?
Oh gosh, so I go on First Dibs a lot. It's a website, and I look for the research pieces. Living here in Michigan is fantastic because there's so many aspects to Detroit or in Michigan. The furniture is all made here, so oftentimes you can find the pieces at resale shops here that you could never find in other states or cities. So the Detroit area is wonderful for that. So resale shops. Of course, there's always eBay. And the Detroit area, I think for us and living here is great because, as a designer, I also can find resources to get anything made here too, which is really nice.
Do you think that's underappreciated?
I do. I think it's coming back now because we actually make things here. And I think you see a national press looking at Detroit as a place that actually makes real products here in the USA. And, a lot of us grew up with our parents being in the auto industry or being engineers or being involved with manufacturing. And if I look for a particular resource, I can just about find anything, somebody to make a particular component here. And as I've traveled around the country and the world, I love it here. Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about how you start your process? So when you get that RFP from the company, what do you do next? How do you start your design?
It's interesting. Sometimes you'd like to go and say, well, I researched the other companies that are out there and what's out there. I really don't do that. I like to start with a fresh slate. And it's hard to say what time of day that, the creativity strikes. Oftentimes for me, it might be late at night, and I'll go back into my office and start to sketch. And I think it's, you try to set a set of criteria for the particular piece, whether it's a price point or a look or a particular style or fashion of the piece and where it might fit. So I think that's how I begin. And then through sketching, I try to refine it to what the manufacturer has in their ability to make. Each company has a different techniques and equipment. So oftentimes I'll take a tour of the company and see what they have in the way of facilities to make pieces and try to curtail a piece for them. You also want to try to push to do something fresh and new too, but I think you have to make it so that it fits.
How often you get an idea where you think, wow, this needs to be made, or I want to make this, and do you actually either sketch or prototype something and then take it to someone to see if they're interested in buying your design or buying your prototype? And how often do you do that as opposed to like responding?
That's a good question. I'd say it's probably 50-50. Oftentimes I'll have a company that will approach me with a set of criteria of what they want the piece to be. And then other times I'll just go and actually create a piece on my own spec and then take it out and solicit to a company where I think it may be a good fit. I work on other products too. You know, as I said, right now I'm working on bike accessories, I'm working on furniture, I'm working on some cord management devices for the consumer market. I've done kids products. So it really varies. Yes.
Could you talk a little bit more about the business side of it? I mean, you know, you say you're giving these commissions or you're doing things on spec.
Yeah, how do we work? You know, it depends on the industry. Some industries, such as the furniture, they'll work on a royalty base. Other industries, such as where I did the industrial computer, it's a fee based. Certainly the business side of design is important. It's important to know the agreements and how to write them. It's also important to work with reputable companies too. Yeah.
Because the theme of today is happiness.
Yeah.
What makes you happy?
Oh gosh, creating. I think it's really wonderful. You know, part of our humanity is we're surrounded by objects every day that support our life, whether it's a chair or a computer or a device of some sort or a blender. And it's really beautiful to be able to bring a sense of humanity or art or fashion to these things that surround us, that are our utility. I think that makes me happy to be able to go out and to be able to even buy a piece or to see something that's unique. Of course, I love art too, so it's I think it's fun to be able to create pieces. So anyway, well, hey, thanks everybody for being here.
Thank you for coming.
Yeah.